space in California, so that when and if those missiles come from North Korea, we can shoot them out of the sky. And we have that capability to a large degree, by the way. It's developed in the state of Alabama. Having said that, probably the best deterrence is mutually assured destruction doctrine. That is a doctrine that has kept us at peace with China and with Russia, previously the Soviet Union, for decades. Inasmuch as the North Koreans do not want to die, Kim Jong-un probably likes living. As long as he understands that if he ever uses any of those nuclear weapons, there will be nothing left of North Korea, I do not believe that he will use them. I believe he's subject to the mutually assured destruction doctrine. And that probably is going to be the long-term solution to prevent those kinds of weapons ever being used to target the United States of America. Having said all that, the focus needs to be on Iran. Bill Clinton empowered North Korea to get nuclear weapons. Barack Obama has empowered Iran to get nuclear weapons and the delivery systems probably about a decade from now, so it's coming. And there are people in Iran who think that because of their religion, they're serving Allah if they take out the great Satan and the little Satan, the United States of America and Israel. Those are the people we really need to start worrying about, because mutually assured destruction doctrine may not work with them. That's why we need to start putting interceptor bases along the missile trajectories from Iran to the United States of America.
Congressman Brooks, this question is for you. This question is from Julie, who is a former administrative law judge. And if you were asked to vote on a nominee from the United States Supreme Court, what legal philosophies do you believe are important for this potential justice?
Very simple. I want on the Supreme Court a judge who will look at the original intent of the people who actually wrote the Constitution, the first 10 amendments, and every amendment thereafter. We have a process by which we can change that intent. It's called amendment. But I am not for any activist judge, particularly the kind that we've seen on the left coast, who have been, with their court orders, shooting down President Obama's efforts to protect us from terrorists that the media loves to call refugees. But in fact, these are people who are coming from parts of the world where there is no functioning government, and it is literally impossible to properly vet them in order to protect American lives. Those kind of judges need to be removed from office. But in the United States Senate, we need to prevent those kinds of judges from ever getting confirmed. And what I want on the Supreme Court are judges who will read the Constitution, the plain language of the Constitution, and obey the law, not make law.
Thank you.
Well, we've got a problem in our court system when we have judges that are ruling above the Constitution and making the supreme law of the land mean what they say it means. We need to go back to the original intent, and if I was on the Senate, I would be for removing judges who put themselves above the Constitution. That's called judicial supremacy. And in fact, I proposed these two bills in 2004 and 2005. The one in the House was sponsored by Adderholt and Mr. Pence, Mike Pence, the Vice President. The one in the Senate was by Shelby, Brownback, and Burr. That said that if they violated that principle, they could be impeached and removed, and it would be a violation of Article 1, Section 3. And under the Constitution, the United States Supreme Court's jurisdiction can be restricted under Article 1, Section 2, Clause 2 by the United States Congress. They can exempt certain things out of the United States Supreme Court's jurisdiction. They've done it in the past. This bill would exempt from their jurisdiction the acknowledgement of God as the sovereign source of law, liberty, and government. It would require that their interpretation of the Constitution not be by foreign law or international treaty or presidential directives, but by the common law up to the time of the adoption of the Constitution. They could not use Sharia law, i.e., they could not use any other law than the common law. And if they violated that, they could be removed from office. These bills need to be reintroduced, and I think with the Vice President having supported this bill before, I can get them there.
As a follow-up question, can you give us some names of some people that you would like to see as Supreme Court justices?
I like people like Herb Titus, who's been working for many years.
Yes, sir.
In constitutional law, and others. I could name others, but you know, that has to be on the president's list. I'm not president.
Congressman?
I liked all of them that were on President Trump's list when he was candidate, Donald Trump. And you saw that we got a real good one from with Neil Gorsuch. And so I'm impressed with the president's ability to select sound Supreme Court justices today. I'm equally impressed with whatever advice Jeff Sessions gave as Attorney General regarding those Supreme Court justices we ought to put on the Supreme Court.
Thank you. Judge Moore, I believe this question is back to you. Climate change. Give the audience your opinion on climate change. Is it real, a hoax, something we should consider? And what level of funding should the United States spend towards the effort in improving or disproving this theory?
I support the president withdrawing from these treaties on climate change. I think climate does change. I think we can do anything about it. And I think it's a distraction from the issues we need to be addressing. And I think it's one of those liberal agendas that just won't quit.
Judge Moore, it may not quit, but it sure does change a lot. Let me give you an example. I was a high school debater on a state championship debate team and also a college debater at Duke University. And one of the topics happened to envelop a little bit of the climate dispute. You know what the climate dispute was back then? Global cooling. Okay? And so I remember this climate scare of the early 1970s, and we had pictures of penguins walking through icebergs in New York City. Okay? That was where they're headed as they try to get more of your money for the research to prove global cooling. Then that didn't work. The planet started to warm a little bit. So then it became global warming. And then around 1990, it didn't warm as much as everybody thought it would. Oh my goodness. We can't keep going with global warming, so let's go with climate change. And you know what? You can't go wrong going with climate change because the climate has always changed. That's the history of our planet. And so now we have to start looking at the cost to do what these extreme leftists want us to do versus the potential benefit. Now bear in mind that the United States of America already has a lot of laws for clean air. We're already doing our part. The problem is with India and China and other countries around the planet that are emitting these pollutants at horrific rates. So any agreements and treaties we enter into have to focus on those countries that aren't doing anywhere near what Americans are sacrificing to do. And you know a good way to do that? An environmental cost tariff. Look at the cost to American businesses and industries of the environmental controls that we want for clean air, clean water, and proper disposal of hazardous waste. Compare those costs to that in other countries, and the delta, that's how much of a tariff we put on their products until such time as they start helping the environment as we do in America.
Let me ask a follow-up question. Were you for President Trump pulling out of the Paris Accord?
Yes, sir.
Judge?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This question is from Jennifer. Great strides have been made in medicine using medical marijuana. What are your views concerning this issue, Congressman?
I think my views are pretty well known. Dom Gentili, he was one of the candidates for the United States Senate. Unfortunately, his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And a few weeks ago, I was honored to have Dom Gentili endorse me in Birmingham. I don't know if y'all heard about that. He'd seen us all, and for whatever reason, he decided I would be the best Republican nominee and the best senator of the whole bunch. And I'm very grateful for Dom Gentili's having done that. One of his issues was medical marijuana, medical cannabis. Now look, I believe in the 10th Amendment and states' rights. I kind of frown upon what's going on in some of those leftist states and the new Rocky Mountain High meme, okay? But that's their right in that state of Colorado or in Oregon or in California to do that. And I also similarly believe that it is the right of the people of the state of Alabama to determine that issue, and our legislature has done it. Our legislature has determined, for whatever reason, I'm deferring to them, that medical cannabis should be an issue between the doctors and the patients to resolve. Now, having said that, there are a lot of plants that produce a lot of stuff. Have you ever heard of opium poppies? They produce painkillers, but they also have a lot of bad things that they can be used for too. So I see no reason to pick on a particular plant when we have all these other plants that produce drugs, some of which are good and some of which are bad. But I believe in states making that decision because I believe in the 10th Amendment and I believe in states' rights, and I'm going to respect whatever decision our state legislature may make on that issue, whether I agree with it or disagree with it, particularly if I disagree with it, because that's the situation where the federal government thinks it knows it all and starts telling states they can't do stuff. If you're going to believe in states' rights, you have to let them be right, and you also have to let them be wrong, and I'm willing to make that difference.
Thank you, Senator.
I got a little trouble the other day when Birmingham News Radio called me, and shortly after Congressman Brooks made some comments about marijuana, and I didn't want to comment on it. I didn't want to comment on Congressman Brooks, but I went off when they asked me the question. I said, that's absolutely ridiculous. It's a state issue. Why should I be concerned with that when North Korea is trying to nuke us, the illegal aliens are coming across our border, and our economy is failing, and the deficit keeps growing? Why should I be concerned about a state issue? Well, immediately they put in the paper that I criticized my opponent. And I had nothing to do with criticizing my opponent. I was criticizing the radio station that asked me such a stupid question. With all the issues that we have in our society, I said, why should I be involved in a state issue like that and ignore the others? But they want to pay, opposition between the parties so they can get more coverage or something. And so I apologized on the Huntsville radio station. I said, I want to apologize that I didn't criticize my opponent. I was criticizing the radio broadcaster that asked me such a dumb question.
I've known these two men for a lot of years. They're actually a lot of fun, too. Let me go to the next question. Are you for a full audit of the Federal Reserve?
Absolutely. I think the Federal Reserve is not part of the federal government, and I think it's using paper money to inflate, and I think we need a full audit of the Federal Reserve. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'm going to go a little bit beyond the question, just to add on something that Roy Moore just said. But yes, I believe in an audit of the Federal Reserve. Okay, that's answering your question. Now I've got a little bit of time to talk about the other. When I announced on May 15th, I announced that I was not going to mention any of my opponents in a derogatory way throughout the campaign unless I was first attacked. Judge Moore has been very respectful of that same position, and I very much appreciate it. Now, I just want to read you a quote by one of our opponents. Our ads are positive about my record, my issues, so we're going to keep our focus on that. That was May the 27th, Luther Strang. Now, if these are positive ads he's running, I don't want to be around when the real negative ones hit us, because they're going to be bad. But I do appreciate the remarks that Judge Moore just now shared with you, and I understand, believe it or not, how the media can sometimes distort things to try to pit Republican against Republican when that was not the intent of what we had communicated. So, Judge Moore, thank you.
Congressman Brooks, a big issue in questions was always the border wall. We're talking about virtual walls, physical walls, observation walls. You have an ad that talks about building a wall, and you're going to help get it built. Tell the audience what you envision the wall should look like, and how do we get the funding?
Well, by way of background, again, for emphasis, Numbers USA has me ranked #1 on border security and illegal alien issues in the House of Representatives out of 435 people. I hope that shows to you my commitment to protect American jobs for American workers and to protect American workers' wages from this huge surge in the illegal alien labor supply that is undermining wages that Americans need to be able to support their families. Now, I'm for building that wall however we have to build it. If we can get Mexico to pay for it, that's great. I've co-sponsored, actually I'm the primary sponsor in the House of Senator Ted Cruz's bill in the Senate to make drug kingpins pay for it. And we've got forfeiture capabilities with El Chapo that's over $10 billion. That's a pretty good step towards building a wall. I've co-sponsored Congressman Mike Rogers from Alabama, his bill to tax the transactions, the transmissions of monies from people here in America to Mexico. Impose a tax on that. That's another way to make Mexicans pay for it. Although the El Chapo, by the way, that might be one Mexican paying for it. Okay? I'm for whatever it takes to build that border wall in whatever way is effective to secure our southern border. And it's an economic reason. By way of example, according to a recent study about 3 years old, the adverse effect on all of us in here, the tax effect of illegal aliens in America, is about a negative $99 billion a year. About $20 billion a year generated in revenue, sales tax, maybe some Social Security tax, things of that nature, and $119 billion in services consumed at the city, county, state, and federal level. $99 billion a year. We could build one heck of a wall with just 1 year's worth of savings.
Amen.
One of the most principal issues that we've got before the Senate and the House today.
Yeah.
I think we need something to stop illegal aliens flowing across our borders, because they're a danger to our republic, they're a danger to our homes, our families, and we can do something. I support using federal troops, National Guard, to stop this. It's not a violation of the Posse Comitatus Act for anybody that wants that. It's specifically recognized that they can be in support of the Border Patrols, and they should be. Both presidents in the past, Republican and Democrat, have used the federal government in such a manner. Now, having said that, if they can't stop it, I would, yes, support a wall being built. But before that, I would ask the states and allow the states like Arizona, when Arizona tried to stop illegal aliens coming across their border, which was a violation of the rules of Congress, a court, a judge, stopped them, said they couldn't do it because the federal government had preempted them. Well, I'd like to tell them, these federal courts, that preemption, they have a right to rule on security for the nation, yes. But a state also has the right specified in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 9 says the migration or importation of certain classes of persons. In other words, it was a recognized right of a sovereign to secure their borders, whether it be a state or the federal government. And what Arizona was doing was exactly what Congress had said should be the law. They were upholding the law. And then the courts ruled that Arizona couldn't do that. We've had administrations that don't know the Constitution and let these things go by, and then we wind up having to build a wall. If it takes a wall, we should build it. I don't think it would take a wall. I think we should use the United States military. This is an action to prevent illegal aliens coming into our country.
Yes, sir.
If we had Mexicans coming into our country or Asians coming into our shores, we have every right to use our military in that manner.
Good idea.
It's time now for closing statements and to, as my grandmother would say, to make it all work out right, I'm going to change it to 3 minutes each on closing statements. Judge Moore, you go first.
Well, I think people have asked me why I'm running for the United States Senate. I'm running for the United States Senate because I think they need action in the United States Senate and in Congress. I think we're at a stalemate right now. I think there are too many people up there that want to stay. They won't do anything to risk their position, their reputation, their prestige, their money. I think we need people that will stand for our country, stand for principles upon which we're based, and not back down. I think that will move the Congress. I think it will help the president. I think right now the president's hands are tied by an establishment that is opposing people like myself from going there. They don't want any opposition. And a lot of things they're doing are unconstitutional. As a judge, as a Chief Justice, I understand the United States Constitution. I understand what should happen to judges who put themselves above that document. I understand what our forefathers based morality on. And I understand that we can return to that if we go back to the separation of powers and checks and balances, the 10th Amendment, and the principle of federalism under the United States Constitution. We got to go right back to recognize that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by the states, are reserved to the states respectively. And then there's 4 words, or to the people. Do you know our religious liberty is being taken by the Supreme Court that is completely ignoring what it's about? The First Amendment.
Yes.
Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof. I meet judges, I meet lawyers that don't understand what that amendment is about. It was there to secure our right of faith. And the rights of conscience are indeed beyond the reach of any human power. They're given by God and cannot be encroached upon by any human authority without a criminal disobedience of the precepts of natural as well as the revealed religion. That statement was made by Joseph Story in the Commentaries on the Constitution, which he dedicated to John Marshall. We have lost and are losing our rights and liberties because we have put judges on a pedestal higher than they're supposed to be, that they can't do anything wrong, and whatever they say is the supreme law of the land. Everybody knows that the judges went and said what marriage was. There was no historical, legal, or documentary evidence to say it was between 2 men or 2 women. They could have easily said it's between 1 man and 5 women, or 1 woman and 5 men. And that's what's coming. That's what's coming. They'll say it's between a man and his daughter, or a woman or her son. We've got to go back to recognizing what the founders put in the document to restrict these judges. A just estimate of that love of power and the proneness to abuse it, which predominates in the human heart, is sufficient to satisfy the truth of this position. That was Washington in his farewell address. He recognized that judges shouldn't go there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.